We are a full spectrum security solutions provider, which means we cover all aspects of security, but we specialize in manpower. So meaning we provide people. So whether that be uniformed armed guards, executive protection teams, residential security teams, corporate office security, what have you, we pretty much do all of that kind of thing. The purpose of LSI is to provide a safe, distraction-free environment for our clients, their family, friends, and staff through high discretion, white glove security services. There are a number of assessments you need to do to determine need. Most importantly is a threat and vulnerability assessment. Does this person actually need security? What are the threats that you're going to face? What are the vulnerabilities with this client or their sites? And how do you mitigate those? There's also a protective intelligence assessment, which is you will have a principal who you'll do a full workup on background, social media, their place of work, their routes of travel, anything pertaining to this person and their movements. You will do an assessment on that to identify threats. This is an overall assessment of what their activities are and what threats they may face. Beyond that, if you're protecting a residence, there's a residential risk assessment. For all these assessments, we bring in subject matter experts that we work closely with. We want to advise them well. So this is what we use for that. A lot of companies don't do that. We'll have our conversations with the clients based on what our findings are. So we'll give a findings and recommendations. Once we land on what the package should be, we call it a security package. What that may mean, you have a residential team only. It may mean you have that and a corporate office team. It may mean you have those two things plus an executive protection team. You may protect one principal or 5. It just depends on the account. A lot of times clients come and they say, I want this. Sometimes it's right based on all these findings. A lot of times it has to be tweaked. The other value of a site assessment is you got to go and get your hands on it. You can do a lot remotely with Google Earth from above and that whole thing. You can prep everything, but you actually want to walk through and see what are the locks on the doors, what are the locks on the windows. So there's quite a bit that actually goes into it, but that gives you your hands-on, real-time view of what you need to solve. So there's a baseline standard. Obviously, every property is different. Right, it has different systems or what have you, gates, doors, what have you. So it's going to vary, but you will have your basic checklist of these are the things I need to cover in my assessment. Some of these depend on how much does the client want. Some of them want it full boat, and then other ones go, good, I'm not so worried about whatever. I want you to cover this other thing. So we'll still check everything and tell them what we think that they need, and then we'll meet in the middle depending on what is their tolerance for security and what do we need to be providing. In the initial proposal, we'll propose the various assessments that we need to make a good decision on what their security package is. That'll be dialogue back and forth with me and the decision maker and or the clients, sometimes in meetings. Typically it's someone seeking out security services. Once they selected us, then I did all the assessments. So we did our threat and vulnerability assessments, we did our site assessments. All that entails good, what's your schedule, when are staff there, what hours of the day, all that type of thing. So we got a good view of what their operation looked like. They had a good idea of what they needed as far as positions, but I made my recommendations, which we went back and forth and lined those things up. Then we had guard selection. Those were uniformed armed guards. Once those guys were selected through everybody and passed, and we had our team together, then we issued them uniforms, gave them the standard operating procedures, we call it SOPs, trained them on it, did a number of walkthroughs with these guys, and let them get on with it. We have to be great at what we do. Part of what we do that separates us and puts us in that echelon of good companies is the preliminary work we do with all the assessments. So just a professional approach. Good, do you really need this? How much do you need? How little do you need? By doing that, simply that alone separates us from most other companies. As a company, you need a private patrol operator's license, which is issued by the Department of Consumer Affairs, Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. That's the company license you need in order to run a security company. There are companies out there that don't even have that licensing and do this type of work. So we have that licensing, we have insurance, the minimum requirement's $1 million, we have a $5 million policy trying to go above and beyond. That covers pretty much any contract we'll run into. Our licensing, our insurance, background of myself and our managers and our team, our investigators is what makes us strong as a company. We have a few different insurances. We have a general liability insurance, which is the main one of concern. So for example, right, Joe Blowstar has no security and he slaps the paparazzi for mouthing off, what have you. That's an assault charge and he's gonna get sued civilly for that and probably lose some money. For example, in that type of client, they'll want security with that guy to deal with those problems. Obviously, you don't want the moneymaker, so to speak, or the star to have to deal with those things, or to have to protect himself even, right? He's worth a lot of money to the studios that are taking care of him. So they want security there. Security will deal with that. They know how to use verbal judo, we call it, or de-escalation, in order to get out of potentially combative situations, right? If they do get into it, they know how to handle that as well. But now you have a security company in the way with their licensing and insurance. Everything's legal, there's insurance in the way. When the aggressor attempts to sue the client, which they will try to do because that's where the money is, now they have to go through the company's insurance policy. So it's better to have $5 million of a room is better than $1 million of a room, right? So it insulates your client legally as far as their safety goes, and also in civil suits and that type of thing. Security is expensive. So we talk about security like car insurance. No one wants to pay car insurance, but you pay it because you might get in an accident and you'd rather not have to come out of pocket for that. So security is the same type of viewpoint for those that need it. It's something that you hope you never have to use, but you definitely want there if you need it. And it also, as the selling point, insulates you from coming out of pocket on civil suits. We've all heard the stories. Somebody got in a fight and got sued for $10 million. So it helps insulate them from that. Every client we have is bound by, we're bound by their confidentiality agreement. Our team is bound by our own confidentiality agreement. We work for high profile individuals, VIPs, high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals. We also work for corporations, educational institutions, things like that. So you can be an entertainer, sports figure, politician. There are a lot of people that are very visible in the world, and with that visibility comes the need for security. Some other questions that clients ask are, what are your capabilities? Can you service this type of contract? Can you service this detail? Here are our needs and wants. Can you solve that? 99.9% of the time, we can solve that. Let me tell you how agents and guards have dealt with incidents. For example, a uniformed guard at a school may have to deal with a parent who's upset. They weren't let in right away. They're in a rush, they gotta get to work, that kind of thing. But our protocol is they don't come in until they're cleared, or they have a sticker on their windshield, and this parent used a different car and doesn't have a sticker on the windshield. The guard didn't recognize them, so they held them up to make the call. That's a very minor incident, and if the guy can communicate with people effectively, it's a non-issue. Just, sorry sir, this is our protocol, and I have to make sure you're cleared before I let you in without the sticker. Something simple like that. Other than that, we've had people show up to residences and say that they had an appointment with a principal. So our guys go through their checklist. Good, is it on the schedule? Check with the POC. Nobody knows this guy. Then they have to turn him away. There is a skill set in that because you do not want to confirm or deny who lives there, even if it's open source information, which some of these places are. So I came here to see Joe Blow, right? Great, can you show me your ID? Or hold your ID up to the camera. Yeah, what's your name? Good, they check it against the list, that kind of thing. So they'll go through a progression of verifying this guy without confirming anything. They determine that he's not supposed to be there. So there's nobody here by that name, sure. But by then he showed you his ID up to the camera, which can read everything. And we've got the information we need. The car's on camera, we got the year, make, model, license plate. We've got this guy's ID if he decided to show it. We have ways to identify him in a background investigation if we need to do that. So with something like that, he'll get turned away. If it's a non-incident, we'll probably do a background on that guy. Criminal civil, find out who he is, who does he work for, what's the issue, just to deem it as not a threat. Sometimes it's a fan. Sometimes somebody had the wrong address, like we want to determine what exactly it was. Sometimes it is a stalker, or he'll be on the lookout list already. So we'll match it against that. Good, this is this guy, he made another contact, and we'll go further as needed. So if we need to, if it's a stalker who's repeated incidents and it has committed a crime, then we'll liaise with local law enforcement on that. A number of incidents where we've dealt with local law enforcement, and we have points of contact in various departments that we'll talk to for that kind of thing in the detective bureau or what have you. Our liaison is usually if somebody trespasses, right? That's something that we'll immediately call law enforcement on. If somebody breaches a property, law enforcement's on the way. That's our first thing, is to make that call. When they come, we want to give them description of subjects and vehicles and direction of travel. There's also like a checklist on what you need to hand off, but those are some basics. Whenever an incident occurs, no matter how big or small it is, guys need to write an incident report. So they'll write an incident report and send it up through their chain of command. It'll go to the detail leader, to the manager, and then get all the way up to me. Oftentimes I will have to relay that to the client, which does a few things. One, it validates why we're there. It validates that we did what we were supposed to do. And it validates that there is a reason for security to be there. These are all in the standard operating procedures on each account, but just a general idea for people to understand what different incidents could be and how we do that. If there's a use of force incident, what that means is somebody had to go hands-on. I had to, either the guy aggressed me and I had to fight him off, or I had to detain him for whatever reason. You got to write up an incident report on that. That's key. Those reports have to go to BSIS. They got to go up and down the chain to the client, to BSIS, to legal so they can look at it for us. Like, we got to cover a lot of bases. That never happens really if we're doing our job effectively ahead of time. But those are just some examples. It's usually diverting things. Typically you're moving from one place to another on an executive protection detail, from the vehicle to inside the venue, from the venue back to the vehicle, from one room to the stage, then back to that room. So typically you want to move fast enough that nothing can hang you up. Routes of travel are cleared before that. Anything introduces itself, it's a divert type thing and continue moving so you don't get hung up type thing. One of the things that I did right is bringing in the right people. LSI standards for me are above and beyond. What is the expected level of service? We are going to do more than that. A high standard of service, maintaining those standards, improving upon those standards and adding to them as much as possible has helped us continue to grow. Separating ourselves from competition with those standards as much as we can. We try to get the top of that scale as much as possible. It's key to our success, so that's a big deal. Yeah.